All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Hello, world. Hello, Nigeria. Hello, all to our participants. You are welcome to another pretty incredible webinar brought to you by, Hello Economy. I see Aminu Bakar is there saying Hello Economy. Yes, very important. Hello Economy. Incredible in-depth webinar from the good folks at nairametrics.com are, of course, ever-present financial advocates that, of course, are bringing you an interesting topic today, an in-depth topic about the first 100 days of the new administration. That is the Tinubu administration, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Of course, the court cases are done. Well, the court cases are not done. Sorry, there are some people are going to the Supreme Court, but he's president for now. Until that is sorted out, we are going to be looking at the first 100 days of the administration, and we have a lot to talk about. I'm Rotu Sodiri, a host of the Global Business Report on Arise News. I'm happy to always be part of these very informative webinars whenever Nairametrics calls on me to be a part of it. And so we are about to be we're about to be getting into some very good discussions. We have an awesome panel, which is going to be introduced in just a moment. And of course, Ugo Dre, the Silver Fox himself, is going to be taking us through an awesome presentation to lay the groundwork for the conversation that we are about to have. So, sit tight. There is a comment box below. There's going to be a Q&A. We're going to be talking about everything. I know you guys have a lot of questions. Foreign exchange, foreign direct investment, terrorism, insecurity, interest rates. It's all going to be here for the next couple hours. So I'm going to throw to Jola to take us through introducing the awesome panelists that are going to be sharing their thoughts, and then we're going to get it in. So let's take it away. Okay, so I think Joanna is with us. Okay. So just Joanna should be with us in just a moment, and then she's going to be introducing. And one of our panelists, of course, is Mr. Chika Mbonu, who you all watch obviously a lot on the Global Business Report. So we're glad to have him. Zeal is with us. Kalu Aja is with us. We're going to be having some very, very in-depth conversations from these individuals. And so Joanna, of course, hopefully will be with us in just a moment, and we'll be introducing each of the panelists. I particularly want to know how we're going to get foreign exchange into Nigeria and how we're going to entice investors to bring those much needed dollars into Nigeria. Okay, here's Joanna. Joanna, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Reuters. I'm excited to be here and have you here. And of course, the panelists as well.
They're all set.
So I'm going to, go on and introduce some of our panelists for today. Of course, carefully selected by Nairametrics for this economic outlook webinar. 100 days of the president in office, a lot of policies and so on and so forth, reactions, reversals, interventions. But I guess what's important is the result of that. But yes, like I said, carefully selected panelists who will be giving us insight into today's conversation. And I'm going to run through their profiles so we have an idea of what to expect. We have Dr. Noimot Bakare Ayub. She's a research economics and assistant advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank. She specializes in consumer finance, economic development, and finance. Previously, she worked as an economist trainee at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and was a visiting scholar at the Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute. She's also served on the Business and Entrepreneurship Advisory Board at Prince George's Community College. She has a PhD and master's degree in economics from Howard University, as well as a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Dr. Noimot Bakare Ayub, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. We also have Zeal Akariwe. He's the CEO of Grime Black Advisory. A seasoned finance professional with over 2 decades of experience in Lagos, London, Lusaka. He heads Grammy Black Advisory, specializing in risk management via derivatives. Starting in insurance, Zeal navigated to HR, administration, corporate banking, before transitioning to treasury work at Standard Chartered in 2004, where he played a key role in structuring Africa derivatives transitions. Since 2016, he's led Grammy Black Advisory, offering financial solutions and regulatory insights. He's known for philanthropy through the Angel Project. He aids prisoners with fines and settlements, settles hospital bills. So, I mean, great job with that, Zeal. It's a pleasure to have you here. Finally, well, not finally, actually. And ultimately, we have Kalu Aja. I'm sure our next guest, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with him on Twitter, stirring the pot and polity on Twitter. But there's a lot more, of course. He's a certified financial education instructor and astute professional with extensive experience in capital and market operations, treasury, investments, asset management, and occupational pension services. He has over 22 years of composite experience gained over the years working with the likes of UAC of Nigeria as a brand manager, I beg your pardon. Also, BGL Limited, where he worked on the institutional pensions desk at Fidelity Bank PLC, where he headed the assets management desk for the private banking unit, and FCMB Pensions PFA, where he was part of the pioneers that set up the PFA from scratch, held the position of the COO, retired from the PFA with over 250 billion naira in assets under management. He has an MBA from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and he is an alumnus of the Lagos Business School, a member of the Association of the Financial Counseling and Planning Education. And of course, I'm sure many of you would have seen his write-ups on the Nairametrics website. Hopefully you run through the website and you also have the app. He is one of our writers and contributors, a lot of insight there. And at least we'll be hearing him verbally today. It's a pleasure to have you in, Kalu Aja. Finally, we have Chika Mbonu, who is a distinguished professional graduating with a first-class honors from the University of Ife. He's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and holds certifications from the Advanced Management Program at Lagos Business School and IESE Business School, Barcelona. He has over 36 years of experience spanning accounting, consulting, and banking. Mbonu has excelled as a trainer, mentor, life coach, and he's made substantial contributions to banking as well, particularly when it comes to training, credit structuring, risk management, and corporate transformations. Currently, he's involved in transformative projects in South Africa, Botswana, Zambia, and Mozambique for a Nigerian bank's acquisition. We have Chika, I beg your pardon, Mbonu. He is a business analyst with Arise Television. It's a pleasure to have you all here as our panelists. And if you're listening right now, it's also a pleasure to have you in. Right now, I'm going to hand over to the founder himself, Ugodre, as he makes the opening presentation, economic recap of the current administration's first 100 days.
All right, thank you very much for the intro, Joanna. Mic check.
We hear you. Yes, great time.
All right, fantastic. Just a quick adjustment there. It's actually Chika Mbonu. Chika Mbonu. Chika is my organ.
I mean, you're a bad girl that I am, but yes, thank you for that.
All right. Okay. So I'm just about to share my screen. Good morning, everyone. Good to have you all here for this economic outlook. I tried to make the presentation short and straight to the point, as we have an amazing panel session today that will delve into some of the things that I'm about to say. Of course, keep the questions coming in the comment section. We try as much as possible to respond to your comments as well. Can you all see my screen? Please just confirm that you can see my screen. Anyone can just confirm it. Joanna, can you see my screen?
We'll go on.
We can.
We can see your screen.
Oh,
go ahead, please.
Fantastic. All right, so President Tinubu was sworn in May 29, and that is not news. So typically, the first 100 days of any president, it never used to be a big deal before until I think it was Roosevelt, sometime, last century, made it a big deal. And then now most presidents around the world tend to see the first 100 days as a barometer of how well a government might perhaps perform in the coming months and years. So that's why it's very pivotal, because if you don't seem to get your first 100 days right, and things might not just augur well. And I think it was a bit of a challenge for the Buhari administration. The first 100 days was a little bit slow, and to a lot of people, that was one of the reasons why they didn't really start on a very good foot when it comes to the economy, and that kind of affected them all through. But looks like it's been a very busy first 100 days, as my my slides here would show. First of all, on May 29, the president went off script, for a lot of people don't know, and removed fuel subsidy. That was the major decision that he took on the very first day at work. And then, of course, June 14th, they announced the unification of the exchange rate. That essentially collapsed all the exchange rates windows that we had in Nigeria into one single window. It was a big deal. For the first time, Nigeria was moving into a managed float exchange rate system. So that was a major achievement for the government. And of course, appointed, is it 45 ministers? Notably among the ministers were some young names, people that a lot of young Nigerians resonate with. And of course, the suspension of the CBN governor and his eventual resignation was also one of the, we can call it an achievement in the first 100 days of the current administration. Subsequently, a new CBN governor has been nominated, and yesterday we heard that they've resumed the current CBN, the new CBN governor and the deputy governors as well, resumed in acting capacity. A bit of a legal quagmire there. I don't know how they want to wrangle that, because the CBN Act actually says when you resign, when the deputy governors resign, they should give 3 months notice. But looks like this is resignation on the spot, and they're leaving. Seems to be, and of course, the suspension of the EFCC chairman, and we haven't heard much since he's been suspended. We heard he's been docked as well. No charges have been brought forward yet against him. And of course, there was the big news of the setting up of the Presidential Task Force on fiscal policy and tax reforms. It's going to be headed by Taiwo Oyedele, who incidentally has been on this economic outlook in the past as well. And we've all shared, we've all learned from a lot of the amazing nuggets that he has shared. So now he's in government to do a lot of the things that he's been advising that the government should do. So amazing to see him there. And of course, the surge in FAC allocation, as soon as fuel subsidy removal was done, the government now had a lot more money to share, to state and to the federal government as well. In July, I think they shared as high as 1.9 trillion. Not sure that we had seen anything that much before. That happened in July. So you can call that major achievement as well. And of course, the Navy stepped up their fight against crude oil theft. And we learned a few months ago that the Navy had bombed 3 rogue oil vehicles, listed names there as well. So all in a bid to fight crude oil theft. Nevertheless, it doesn't look like crude oil production is still going up, but it's a huge fight, because from what we gather, this is purely organized crime. So it's not going to be easy to defeat that, but they started work already on that front. They also gave 5 billion to state governors. Initially, I think they wanted to share the money to Nigerians via using the same sort of trader money platform, but at some point they realized that the data that they had wasn't that good and didn't think it was a good idea. Of course, a lot of people push back. Now, one thing you must give this administration, though, is when you do criticize them, they tend to step back and make corrections and then move on. So they did try to make corrections and prefer to give 5 billion naira to each of the state governors to share to their citizens, and also buy 100,000 bags of rice and 40,000 bags of maize. But that actually hasn't really worked out as well as they expected, because some states haven't even started sharing anything at all. So And that is still a little bit shaky. However, I mean, as far as the FG is concerned, they have actually given out that money. The president as well has been junketing the entire world. Kind of reminds me of Obasanjo days. When he just resumed, when he was president, back then in 99, 2000, he traveled quite a lot. So he was trying to mend fences with a lot of countries across the world. Of course, this current president has been moving as well, light speed on the diplomatic front, him and the vice president. So I think they visited like 11 countries so far. Crazy. Yeah, so all in a bid to try and at least improve Nigeria's standing on the diplomatic front, as well as look for foreign direct investment for the country. And so far, it looks like we've gotten some promises. That's what it is. Close to $20 billion in investment from foreign investors. Indians as well are lining up, we hear, to fund Nigeria or to invest in the country. But one thing I also gather is that a lot of these investments is not just going to come as cash. It's not like they're just going to give you all cash like that. Most times, these investments do have some kind of strings to it. For example, they will tell you that you would have to use their own companies so for example, if they're going to invest in infrastructure, and you're probably going to use their own companies for the infrastructure development, similar to what Germany did with Siemens when we were looking for money for investment in the power sector. So Siemens was basically the German company that was going to facilitate all that using German funds. So similar deals, looks like that's what the current government is also doing. The NGX, that's the all share index for those in the stock market, hits an all-time high during this 100 days as well. For a lot of people who don't know, as much as Main Street, which is where all of us all belong to, has been ruling, has been suffering, has been complaining, with economic hardship, the stock market seems to be on a different tangent entirely. They see, it appears that they kind of like some of the policies of the government so far, and so stocks have basically recovered all that losses that we incurred. I'm sure if you guys remember 2008 and 2009, and it's still climbing. We did have a little bit of a dip yesterday, but stocks are still very, very strong, back to where they were over a decade ago. And of course, just recently we heard the FG has approved increase of salaries for tertiary institutions by a whopping 35%. So is that what is to come next? Who knows? All right. So those were the achievements. But I mean, those achievements do have their own fallouts, and that's what I've tried to do here. So what have been the fallouts of the achievement? The first one that comes to mind is the exchange rate. My God. So looks like we're going back to where we were before June 14. So you can see the exchange rate disparity here. It was really, really huge, because at that time, the central bank under Emefiele, and of course under President Buhari, preferred to have a fixed exchange rate at about 480 or thereabout, and then but the parallel market had its own way of determining its own price, and exchange rate at that time was averaging about 740, 750. And the interesting thing was that it was kind of flat for a while, especially immediately after the election, and we had very flattish exchange rate, as you can see here. But as we now merge the windows, everything joined together. It was the same thing. Exchange rate in the parallel market and the official market was about the same for a few days, until everything just went haywire. As you can see here, the official rate is still, hovering around 750, 770 and all of that. But as you can see, the parallel market rate is closing in on 1,000 naira to the dollar. Who would have ever thought that would be here? But that's what's looking like. So in terms of the fallouts of the achievement, exchange rate close to $1,000 naira to the dollar, depreciated by 24.5% in 3 months already. FX, and that depreciation is of course from where we were before June 14. FX reserves is now $33 billion, down from $35 billion. If you listen to JP Morgan, they'll tell you that it's probably $3 billion. So that this might not really represent the actual external reserves. Fuel prices surged to 617 naira per liter average across Nigeria, and looking likely that fuel prices might also increase again. I did see some cues over the last few days as oil prices start to hit $90. and an exchange rate starts to hit $1,000. People are worried that fuel prices might go up again. And one of the fallouts as well is that people don't even go out again these days. Diesel prices hit $1,000, 1,000 naira per liter as well. So that's the fallout of a lot of this decision. The electric tariff increases that were meant to also happen were frozen. And so subsidy is back in the power sector. So the government is also subsidizing power right now. So as much as we've removed subsidy from petrol, subsidy is back on the power side. Inflation rate, of course, we all know 25.8% and is likely to keep rising. I actually think it's a lot more than this, but I mean, this is what the official number says, 25.8%. Labor unrest is increasing. Every day we hear there's going to be strike. We're not sure whether it's strike, but they say they'll strike. And then now we're even seeing NLC and TUC going their own separate ways. Typically, NLC and TUC are always on the same side when it comes to strike. But now, I think TUC is kind of deterring, but NLC is insisting that there might be a strike. So this is hoovering on the government as well. Crude oil production is still very low, despite a lot of the work that the government is doing. We're still around 1.2 or so million barrels per day. And we've now lost our first position as Africa's largest crude oil export to Angola. In terms of the Purchasing Managers Index, which sort of gauges how private sectors or private businesses view the economy, it's dropped to the lowest in 5 months at 50.22 points, which suggests, businesses are worried about the outlook of the economy and don't really think things are going to get better anytime soon. That's just their opinion. So this is usually tracked by Stanbic IBTC, I believe. And of course, we did hear public debt is now 87.3 trillion. That was also because they had added ways and means, which was the CBN loan to the federal government. It's now part of Nigeria's public debt. So now we are at 87.3 trillion in public debt. And of course, lastly, if you go on the Twitter streets or a lot of social media streets, or even in regular main street, what you keep hearing is premium shege. So people are worried. People are feeling the heat of what is happening in the economy. So what are the major headwinds that this current government has that I think? I feel labor unrest is likely to boil over if they don't address it quickly. So that is one major challenge the current government might face in the next 100 days. And of course, there's also that Supreme Court case hanging over with Atiku and Obi saying that they're going to take they're going to appeal at the Supreme Court over the election victory. So that is still a bit of a challenge for the current president. There's also a huge controversy around his university certificate. I don't know why that hasn't gone yet, but looks like there's a bit of a problem there. So that is also one issue that the government needs to face as well, or is facing as well, and will likely face as time goes on until this is cleared. Frustrations are still there. Nigerians are still looking to japa. If you speak to foreign currency operators, like BDC operators, they will tell you that a lot of their customers are people who have basically sold all their properties and just want to get the hell out of the country. So that will continue to be a challenge, for the current government. Even though I feel as exchange rate continues to depreciate, you're going to get less people wanting to japa because it now becomes very expensive to japa. Poverty is rising across the country. Look around you, people are really struggling as well. So the president would need to deal with that matter as quickly as possible, because when you have people that are very poor, hungry, and can't eat, it can be a major social crisis. And so that's one thing the government needs to deal with. And the government as well, people are complaining a lot about image laundering and always trying to be put the government in good light. Even little things that the government do, they try to sort of make it sound like it's a big deal. So people are already pointing out holes, and that's a bit of a challenge, because you need a government that has strong integrity, and that when they say they've done this, they actually have done it, and not just trying to sort of win in the court of public opinion. So it's something that the government needs to watch out for. And of course, foreign investors are yet to return to Nigeria. So the government will need to continue to move foreign investors. It's going to take a bit of time for them to come back, but it looks like a lot of the things that we're meant to be doing, we're doing, but it's taking time because foreign investors want reassurance that we would at least clear the current FS backlogs that we have, and so that needs to be clear. And of course, this little gist of $3 billion net that they claim will have, now that we'll have new CBN, a new acting CBN governor, acting CBN deputy governors, maybe there'll be a bit more transparency, and we can actually see where we are in terms of external reserves and the country's finances from the central bank point of view. Of course, this current government is also being accused of nepotism. I think there's fear that there might be crony capitalism and state capture. So that's one thing the government will need to deal with. People are wary that this is looking like a government of friends. And so, but we hope that's not really what it is. And this is just a government of competent people. Likely surge in insecurity, that is not new to all of you here. That's what typically happens when the economy is pretty bad. And of course, youth unrest will likely go on. People are really agitated. I think a few days ago, there was a protest because of the death of the Nigerian musician. So you can see that people can actually come out to protest, and all you need is just one little trigger. So that's one thing the government needs to also be very wary of. And of course, climate change. We've seen what's happening in Libya. We've seen what's happening in some other countries. We fear that, we hope that we don't get through this. Someone was telling me yesterday that he was driving through Terminland and when it was raining, and he could see the water levels really risen. He's never seen it that high before. I didn't see it myself, but he was really worried. And somebody else said that, look, if you even go to Eco Atlantic, the water level there as well seems to have risen. And so these are just some of the issues that the government will need to deal with. So what do we do in the next 100 days? Quickly stabilize the exchange rate. That needs to be done. And it's up to this man here to make sure that the exchange rate is stabilized. We need to clear FX backlogs, $10 billion or thereabout. That needs to be done. Tough decisions on the IMF, on whether to go on the IMF loans or let's seek bilateral loans. But we do need some form of bailout ASAP before the end of this year, actually. So the next 100 days is very, very pivotal for this government. We need to secure FDI, like I mentioned. Disagreements with labor unions needs to be sorted out. Civil service reforms is very important, as much as they're trying to increase minimum wage for workers. Civil service reforms is also something that the government needs to put on the table. There's a huge physical imbalance that the government has or does also need to deal with. As you all know, we have a huge physical deficit that needs to be resolved, because that's actually why we're going to the central bank to borrow via ways and means. So we still need to plug that hole. And of course, Dangote refinery, is it going to start November, as they say? Remember, they claimed it was going to start in July, but now it's November. Dangote refinery people are also saying, look, we do need crude for us to actually refine. So a little bit of a cliffhanger there, but we're hoping that that will kickstart. So that's one thing they need to do in the next 100 days. Of course, increase crude oil production. There's a strong belief that once we're able to increase crude oil production to at least 1.8 million barrels per day, things might start to stabilize. When I say stabilize, I mean the exchange rate and a lot of the economic indicators as well. Crude oil theft needs to be eliminated. We also need to improve the power situation, and then start spending on infrastructure development. The roads are really bad, and Nigeria does need infrastructure if you want to grow this economy. There's also geopolitical tension across West Africa and the Sahel region as well. So Tinubu has been moving as well to try and douse a lot of all those issues. We are seeing coups left, right, center. This also needs to be top burner on this agenda so that we don't start to have migrant crisis here in Nigeria. And of course, intra-Africa trade is very important for this current administration. So that essentially is my presentation. Thank you so much, Rotus. I hope that I've been able to at least do a good summary of the first 100 days of the current administration. Thank you very much, Joanna.
Ugodre, look, you always do this. You do justice to these presentations every single time. And you're asking whether you hope you've done a good job. You just want us to praise you. You're solid. It's solid. It's in depth. It hits all the right notes, and you set the agenda for the day. So, Ugodre, round of applause. Great stuff. Always setting the agenda for us. Great presentation as well. And I always ask for these presentations after the webinar is done. So we're going to jump in now to our discussion points. We have our panelists with us, and we are going to get, unfortunately, Dr. Niomot Bakari, of course, is research economist, is unfortunately not with us, but we push on, we power on. So we're going to look at some focus areas: human capital development, the economy, public finances, the public sector, and kick things off with Mr. Chika Mbonu, MD CEO, KSB Advisory Partners Limited, also, of course, a Rise business analyst, or one of my favorite, the favorite analysts that I have on my show. Chika, this is familiar territory for us.
He's my favorite too, though. He's my favorite too.
Exactly. He keeps it real. Chika, I want to start with public finances. And I guess for everybody, I also just get an assessment. Chika, you talk about public finances, you talk about debt a lot. What's your assessment in the first 100 days of how public finances have been addressed by this administration, the groundwork they've laid? Chika, what's your take? The floor is yours.
Morning, guys. Morning. Rotus, I hope you're hearing me. Please nod your head if you're hearing me.
I can hear you. Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to my video, but it's Nigerian problems. Ugo, you have finished the work. Why did you invite us to this seminar? You finished. Why did you invite? You don't need us, please, Ugo. You have, as you are talking, I'm talking. I said, this man, he just wants to chip in us today. What do you want us to do? But we have a lot of viewers on this program now. At the last count, we have up to almost 300 viewers, people watching us. But so try and, put one or two perspectives. Public finance. The public finance, remember, revenue, and expenditure driven by the federal government budget in Nigeria, and an assessment of the first 100 days. The first thing I want to add is that some of us have, over the last 3 years, I'm wrote to validate this. I've been saying that Nigeria is a broke country. I said it on air, and I remember the first day I said it. Some people thought, Chika, why are you, raising this kind of news? Well, I said we're a broke country about 3 years ago, and because as a little accounting that I read, you will see expenditure. Then you say financed by, revenue from oil, revenue from that, and there's always a big gap, and you'll be asking yourself, how is the government financing this gap? And it's always a problem. And so the initiatives of the Tinubu administration, in the first 100 days, the key initiatives align with the things that we knew that they should do. First one is this issue of removal of fuel subsidy. You see, we didn't really have a choice in the removal of fuel subsidy because we could not sustain it. The public finance could not sustain it. So that is very commendable. Incidentally, almost all the presidential candidates, the 2 or 3 other ones, have also said they were going to go. So we don't have problem with that. As we've already said, the problem is how they have handled the fallout from that, the removal of that fuel subsidy. And the only problem that we have now is, the diesel prices have inched up to about 1,000 plus now. I want to tell you also on this program that indeed the PMS, which is petrol price, should also be hugging that 1,000 naira now per liter, if not for the subsidy that has come back into the system. So, ladies and gentlemen, let nobody fool you. A subsidy, by whatever name that is called, whether it's recovery, under recovery, whatever it is back into the public finance. And the advantages that we got before, though we thought we have, we may lose them unless something else happens. The other one that I want to make a comment about is the foreign exchange. When they talk about unification, the unification had to do with the fact that CBN had a multiplicity of rates, exchange rates, and they all coalesced now into one rate. So there's no more rates for school fees, no more rates for medicals, no more rates for manufacturers, no more rates for retail, and so on and so forth. So there's only one window. But listen to this, guys. I also said it then, and it was validated by somebody senior in CBN then, among this team that had left, when we were pushing him to free the market. He said, Chika, the rate now is officially is about 465 now. The free market was about 600, 700 then. He said, unless we have a supply plug at the end, the free market will be a mirage. As you move the official market up, the free market will continue to run. Now, at the last count, you saw after we enjoyed the closing of the gap for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, the gap today is about 219 or 220. So the same things that were happening when the rates were at 465 and 700 are the things happening now with the rest government rate, CBN rate at 780 or 800, and then the parallel market rate at 1,000. Because of the one issue, the issue is the supply plug. The supply plug. We don't have the supply plug at the end, and that's the major issue. I have spoken about this several times, and even the other day I said, where do this supply come from? So that's a major issue for this government. Where do you get the supply for foreign exchange? We already said it that between now and December, we must have something about supply. Otherwise, the whole system will be totally messed up. So it's a big problem. Now, I said before that revenue, the public finance is revenue and expenditure. We used to hear from the former government that our problem is not debt. Our problem is revenues. And, we used to say, no, you cannot isolate both. I said, it can't be this, they go in tandem. Look at the level of the debt that we have now. Look at, depending on where you read, you hear that we're using about 80-90% of the revenues for servicing debt. Now, Ghana has been called out as a bankrupt country. I want to let you guys know, those who are watching us also know that appellation is not too far away from Nigeria if something is not done drastically. Because as I'm talking to you now, we don't understand the finances of Central Bank of Nigeria. We don't know where they are. We don't know how much we are owing, and so on and so forth. So it's important.
It's important, and then Chika stops. So he left us on a cliffhanger there. Chika, I hope you can reconnect and tell us what's important. But I think he's already hit those notes. All right.
Yeah.
Public finance. Okay, Chika, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, you said it's important. You stopped. Where you stopped was it's important. So take us from there. It's important and what?
Yeah. It's important. I said, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I said that as we progress, it's important that we understand the key challenges that we face. And the challenges that we face include how to expand our revenue and reduce our expenditure. How do we expand our revenues and reduce our expenditure? Those are the challenges that we face. So the key things that we expect them to do, they have done them. We'll give them we'll clap for them for those ones. But the issue remains: one, they're implementing an inherited budget. Two, we have not seen any major initiatives that have to drive up, revenues. I have said it several times that God blessed us. He may attack me. I have said it several times that God blessed us with oil. On every parameter that you analyze, oil has been a major source of revenue. Oil has been a major source of foreign exchange. That has been so for the last how many years? Almost 50 years. Despite all the development plans that have been saying that we need to diversify our revenue from oil to something else. But the issue is what we have is oil. Our production came down from almost 2 million barrels to less than 1 million barrels a day. And I've said it several times that I expect this government, to do something drastic, emergency about our oil production. A lot of charlatans and thugs have taken over our oil production. The government needs to look at NMPC as structured. In one of the programs I did last week, I analyzed it. I said oil is price of the oil times the volume of production. Price is out of our hands. But we are lucky. We have been blessed by OPEC. Prices are moving up to $100 per barrel again. But volume of production is under our control. What is government doing towards that? For me, that's what is important. How do we, get production levels up again to enable us to recover the revenues and foreign exchange from there? See, it's not rocket science. Each time this country has been in distress, it's been our oil production that has saved us. Go and check it. While we're diversifying revenue, moving from India to Middle East to America and whatever, what God has blessed us with here, I think that the president should go and do something that President Yar'Adua did when he took over. Now, let me stop there for public finance for the meantime, so that I don't take the whole time. We'll have very short time. Thank you.
Excellent stuff, Chika Mbonu. Thank you so much for that. Let me quickly jump to Kalu Aja. Another awesome part of our awesome panel here. Kalu, human capital development. There's been a lot in there. I want to get your assessment, and particularly this whole talk of education, whether it should be free, because you've seen what's happened in the education sector with that, bill that's been put forward in order to raise revenues. You've seen revenues, or rather, tuition going up. It looks like the federal government is trying to ease its burden on funding the universities. I just want to get your, as if you want to touch on that, that's fine. But your assessment, the first 100 days, human capital development from this administration, Kalu Aja. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Rotus, thanks, Obi, and thanks for the invite to the session, right? So, I mean, it's the main policy that we've seen is the student loan policy, right? And also recently they've increased in funding or the salaries of tertiary workers. So those are positives. It's not enough, but I think they're putting more money into the loan side of education and also the salary. So that's positive. If you drill down now to the student loan that was released, right? It's too, in my view, too little. It's 1%, 1% of contribution from FIRS, from the other government agencies. If you do an extrapolation from, say, June 2023 results of what those guys brought in terms of fiscal revenues, that's about 50 billion. Even if you double that to 100 billion, you want to ask yourself, is 100 billion enough to fund student loans for Nigerian students across the board? Then you talk about other little stuff that they put into the bill. When you talk about guarantors, that's the way to introduce collateral. And for a nation where almost everyone, like there's a lot of folks that cannot afford to maybe feed or go to universities, when you bring in collateral, you're essentially saying that student loan is going to be only exclusive to those that can afford collateral or can get a judge to sign for them. So good intentions, but I think the way it's written, you want to jail parents that don't pay off, and that if your father borrows, then the son can't get a loan. So it might need to be, rewritten, make it a normal student loan, the same way it's done across the board. If you're a student, go on your own credit. If you don't have credit, just get a loan, more or less, right? You graduate and then you can pay back. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. So you can allow, then the whole idea is this. If I'm an entrepreneur and I know that you can pay, I can invest in a school. Right now, if I want to invest in a school, I might worry that I might not get folks that can pay me. So my business case might not work. But if the government says we can guarantee that any student that is enrolled into a school in Nigeria, the government will pay you, that's a business case for me to then go get investments, to then invest in Nigeria. And education can be a big contributor to not just employment, but FX earnings. So imagine we took Ekiti or Imo and we built clusters of universities there, and we charged in dollars for foreigners and naira for locals. That's FDI is flowing, that remittance is also flowing in. So education is one space we haven't really tapped. And I think if we do the policy there properly, we can get some mileage from there in terms of human capital development. Apart from that, look at the palliative side of the government, how they roll out palliatives. Doesn't leave you much comfort that they're going to really address human capital development. They've just done it like, take 2 billion, go and buy rice and give to people. So I haven't seen much there. The ministers were just appointed. The only thing we can applaud is the law, the past law on the students' loan and the increase in salaries. Apart from that, not too much to cheer about. And those things have to be rewritten to make it a bit more simple and a bit more practical and link it to larger economy, remittances, and to grow the economic base. Thanks.
Kalu Aja, thank you so much for that. Let me now bring in Nabila Mohammed. Nabila Mohammed, an investment research analyst at Chapel Hill Denham, over 5 years experience in the finance industry, banking and investment research combined. She's passionate about capital markets and the pivotal role it plays in the economy. She's also a certified member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria and the Nigerian Institute of Management. Prior to Chapel Hill, she worked with Access Bank PLC as a relationship manager. In her capacity as a relationship manager with Access Bank PLC, under the commercial banking division, she handled CBN intervention fund facilities. All right. I'm gonna ask you something about that. Okay, no, they've gone. So we won't press her about that. Facilities for top corporates in Zamfara states, including the state government. She believes the finance industry has a raw and untapped potential to revamp the entire African economy. Okay, well, Nabila, you're very welcome. I'm going to take you up on that as far as the finance industry and its untapped potential to revamp the entire African economy, because one of our focus areas is infrastructure. You heard Ugo Dre in his presentation when he was saying the roads are bad. When I saw me when I started, I was in my car, I had to park because if I try anyway. So what's your take on what's been done on infrastructure? And should we decentralize this to the states? I'm in Lagos. Should I be blaming the federal government for the giant holes in the road on a Lagos road, or should I be blaming the Lagos government? Maybe you can get into that. So let's get your assessment of past 100 days infrastructure. Nabila, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rotus. I believe everyone can hear me. I'm loud enough.
Yes, we can. Loud and clear. We can see you.
Okay.
We like the background.
My view, thank you so much. My view on infrastructure is that the infrastructure and adequate security that Nigeria actually needs right now is not something that 100 days in office can, provide for or can address. However, we have seen that, some policies have started to be put in place in line with, bringing in infrastructural developments that are in the long-term view and not in the short term. So 100 days is too short, in my opinion, to see any significant infrastructural development. However, we like the fact that with the removal of fuel subsidy, monies that were initially used to reduce the pump price for the average Nigerian to be able to access it are now going to be channeled towards infrastructural developments around power, providing power to industries, running hospitals, and even providing education and universal basic education to children. I believe any well thought out infrastructural development or security address that the nation has to do has to be properly planned, has to be properly monitored and implemented and evaluated along the line. So 100 days is too small to get any infrastructural development out there. However, we applaud the fact that some monies are being saved from the subsidy, and we can channel these things into other areas of the economy and provide the necessary infrastructure that we need to move forward. And just to answer your question regarding, is it for state? I mean, I've also had discussions with people where they tell us that this road is for the federal government, the other road is for the state. So if it will benefit the entire nation to have these different states, cater to what is within their territory, why not? I mean, the government should look at explore all possible options if they truly want to get the right infrastructure that we need in this country. So if involving the states in making sure that their own jurisdiction is having the right things. In fact, I like what the new electricity bill is doing, the fact that it allows for states to be able to write their own meter rules and regulate it within themselves. It will promote healthy competition. I mean, the state that has the right rules set out with regards to powering their states will attract the most investment. And that's what we want. We want healthy competition. We want the fact that everybody would be pulled into this thing to get what we want done. But 100 days, I will repeat, is too short. And if I even want to go as far as the visits that the discussions around during the G20 summit with India and the visit to United Arab Emirates, I mean, we like some of the commitments that we had during that meeting. The commitments from, industries or companies that already have presence here and are committing certain amount of funds to bring about infrastructural development in the country. If I'm speaking about the specifics, I'll call the likes of Indorama, the likes of Bati Enterprises that already has Airtel, and of course they'll be looking to bring about 5G in Nigeria. All these infrastructural developments are what we need, and these are private individuals. What does that even say? It means that it's beyond the government. It is like there's no hardware about it. It's beyond the government alone to handle all our bridge the gap, the infrastructural gap that we are currently facing. Private individuals have to be brought into this. They have to come, everybody's hands has to be on deck to address these issues. And the visit, to United Arab Emirates, yes, the ban is not lifted yet, but I mean, having that meeting just sort of sends hope that this ban would most likely be lifted, and we would see that the airline businesses are restored, and the business traction, because some people do business, to and fro that route, they will be able to resume their business activities the way they are supposed to. And if I want to even drill down to, okay, where is the funds going to come from? Looking at the Partnership for Global Investment and Infrastructure that the G7 came up with sometime this year. If I want to go as far as that and say, okay, they should tap into it, or are they not going to consider that since we are having FX challenges? My take, in fact, our view in-house at Chapel Hill Denham is that Nigeria's infrastructural deficit should be funded using our local currency and not foreign currency, because you cannot have exchange rate volatility and be taking loans in foreign currency. We have a fund, a Nigerian infrastructure debt fund, that can actually address some of these issues if we just look inwards and use our money to address our problems. I think I'll leave it there so I don't talk too much. But I mean, generally speaking, 100 days is too small, but we like the fact that some things are in place so far, and there has been some commitments, and there has been some visitations, like as mentioned by Go during his presentation. We've seen the president go around. He's not even going alone. He's going with private individuals. He's going with key people of the economy that understand this particular process of bringing about infrastructural development and addressing insecurity challenges that we have in the country.
Thank you, Nabila. And whenever our guests, they always say one hot thing that can spark another debate. Do we have the funding to take care of infrastructure in our local currency? That could be a whole nother webinar by itself. We're running behind. We're supposed to have ended this already, and so but Zeal Akaro is supposed to round this up. I'm going to have him kick off the next segment. You know why? Because the next one is on foreign direct investment. Yeah, attracting FDI to the Nigerian economy. And Zeal Akaro, he came on my show, and the social media team loved what he was saying. They used it as a caption. He said, quote, "Nigerians do not exist for foreign investors." So Zeal should be the one to kick us off on this next matter of attracting FDI to the Nigerian economy. So Zeal, my man, maybe you can shed more light on that, and I guess tell us how you see the economy. There he is. How you see the government has what they've done to attract FDI. Maybe you can enlighten us on more why you said Nigerians don't exist for foreign direct investment. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Otis. Good morning, everybody. I think my screen is a bit blurred. Let me see if I can clean that up. But
we
yes,
can hear you and see you loud and clear.
Okay, I did say that Nigerians do not exist for foreign investors, and I still stand by that. Does not mean that we should not do things that will attract them, but we should not redesign our economy just for the sole purpose of attracting foreign investment, because foreign investment will come and it will go, and what will be left to be the state of the economy it leaves behind. So we've had major issues starting from 2015 with regarding our foreign exchange earnings. It was managed terribly between 2015 and 2016. It led us to a recession. Post-recovery, post a very fragile recovery of that recession around 2017, things seem to have stabilized till 2020 when COVID hit, and then we were not able to address the issues again. Now, foreign investment is something that's very interesting, and I like to separate foreign investment from local investment because of the quantum, but a lot of the foreign investment that comes into Nigeria, a lot of it is actually investments from Nigerians who have funds abroad. This is excluding the institutional investments that we're talking about. The key things we need to look at is investments in general will be directly correlated to 2 or 3 factors. 1, confidence in the economy, confidence in the economy is driven by policy, and 2, liquidity. Basically, if I bring money into the economy, the one question any investor, foreign or local, will ask, can I get my money back? If that answer is not an unequivocal yes, then confidence will begin to deplete. As confidence depletes, inflows from investors starts to go down. If you're dependent on that, then your the value of your currency starts to depreciate. But Rotus, beyond the foreign investment figures, which I'm sure most of us should know, it went as low as $1 billion from as high as almost 20. But guess what? A metric that we pay very little attention to, and Kalu Aja has addressed it. He's one of the very few people that has ever looked at it and spoken about it, is net flows through the economy. The currency's value is significantly more tied to your net flows through the economy than it is your investment. So for example, when in 1999-2000, when we sold the GSM licenses, we were able to do something that I hoped it didn't happen, but I had hoped that we would replicate it across various sectors. When we talk about the government selling assets, people think oil, blocks, property. But in 1999-2000, we created an asset in bandwidth that the GSM companies bought. And we sold each license at the time, if you remember, $285 million. So we sold 3 GSM licenses at the time. Licenses is what we sold. And we got almost $1 billion in FDIs. And that FDI goes to the central bank, helps the central bank meet demand and all of that. But that money largely stays. It's very different from what Emefiele was doing when he was raising interest rates with the special bills, the OMO bills, paying as high as 18% at the time to attract foreign investors. And that for me was, you're just paying people to lend you money for a very short period of time, and they'll take it back out, and it leaves your economy back where it was. And if that does not continue, when they're exiting, it's going to put pressure on the currency, which is what we've been seeing since at least the last 8 years. So FDIs are important because the FDI importance is not just the foreign exchange it brings, it's the infrastructural investment into the economy. When a company comes and builds a $300 million plant, the plant exists, the plant will work, the plant will operate, the plant will generate value. When you buy a GSM license, you see the ancillary revenues and the economic effect it's having. The FDIs are far more, in my opinion, important regarding the infrastructural development they bring, the employment, the creation of value. The foreign exchange for me is just ancillary. It's great to have, but that's not the main thing. If we don't pay more attention to the policies that drive net flows through the economy, at the peak, for example, in 2013, net flows through the Nigerian economy was in excess of $100 billion. And those who remember, it rose from 80, 90 to 100 over a 3-4 year period. In that time frame, CBN did not sell any money. All the money for our imports and remittances and everything was funded via the interbank markets with the net flows through the economy. Now, when that started to dwindle was when policies started changing, and our policies started changing when the Buhari administration came in, and then they were under pressure from falling oil prices, and they started to touch things that were sacrosanct in the financial markets. And that's one of the many ills of Emefiele. He started touching things that should not have been touched, and the confidence started dropping. The cash flow through the net flows through the economy started dropping. Then the backlog was created. We got into recession. Confidence was affected, and that's where we are now. So regarding attracting more investment, whether portfolio investment or direct investment or even local investment, one of the things that we need to do that's really important is to restore the lost confidence. Now, we have a backlog of foreign exchange demand that has not been met. We have obligations through letters of credit, remittances, IATA, all of those things that have not been met. You cannot restore confidence with people you're owing while you are still owing them money. we need to find a way either to create a transparent system that shows them a sinking fund or a sequential plan to eradicate all the backlog over a period of time and stick to it. That would help with confidence. We also have to also look at various policies. I mean, for example, just so that we don't spend too much time on this, the 41 or 42, whatever items ban is a bad policy because you're trying to use monetary policy to affect fiscal reforms. You don't do that. It's very bad signaling. Something else that this government has not been able to maximize is posturing. So, for example, there are little pedestrian errors they keep making that are completely avoidable. 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago or last week, a new board of governors of the central bank was announced. Everybody was expecting it, and it happened. In my opinion, it was bound to happen. The timing was a bit suspect. Reason I say that is Monetary Policy Committee meeting is meant to be Monday, Tuesday. The week before an NPC meeting, you basically fire the board of governors, bring in a new board of governors who all need to be confirmed by the Senate. The Senate is on recess till the day the policy committee meeting is meant to sit. If you had delayed that announcement a week or two, then it would not have been as disruptive. So now we have to move a monetary policy committee meeting. It is not abnormal. Well, I don't say it's not abnormal. It's not such a big deal, but it's just bad posturing. It's bad optics. It looks like the government does not have things together. It's not a good signal regarding confidence. So these are some of the little things that we need to sit down and be able to align our actions properly so that we exude as a nation regarding our policies, our economics, the macroeconomic environment, and our plans. We exude the type of confidence that investors can bank on and start bringing their investments back, and that Nigerians themselves can start bringing their own funds back to use in the economy. That's it, Rotus.
Excellent stuff, as always, Zeal. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Kalu Aja, let me bring you in here. Exchange rate unification is, of course, we've talked about FDI now. There's been a whole lot of talk, floats, managed floats, this, that. I want to get your take on what's been done so far, the attempt to unify the exchange rate. You tweet about this a lot. Help a lot of folks that are participants that are watching right now. So I guess you can explain what the government attempted to make happen, and what's happened since then, what the issues are with the exchange rate unification.
Yeah, well, so prior to the new policy, right, we had two exchange rates, and we had what's called a peg. So essentially, the Central Bank of Nigeria pegged the naira to the dollar and says, if you bring 400 or 467 naira to us, we will give you $1. So that's a peg. That's a promise that we would exchange anytime you want 467 naira for $1. And this goes to everyone that's holding naira. So if you're an airline operator and you operate in Nigeria and you sell tickets in Nigeria, you can go back to the CBN, give them your 467 naira, and they give you $1. So that's the peg. How do you maintain the peg? You maintain the peg with your reserves. So your foreign reserves are then used to pay when folks bring that naira to you in the CBN. That was what we had in the past. What has then occurred is that more imports and more commitments, more demands on the dollars that Nigeria is holding via the CBN has basically, we cannot meet those commitments, those demands on the dollar. So when you have a fixed peg, what countries do when you have an excess demand is you devalue. So when you devalue that 467 or so, you increase to say 600. So I need more naira to get the dollar. So I sort of protect my reserves. So you can defend or you can devalue. You can't do both of them. So Nigeria had been defending the naira. We had been spending the dollar reserves to defend the naira. And at a certain point, we said, we don't have the reserves. We didn't know about JP Morgan issues then, but right now we know. But back then we said we can't defend the naira anymore. We're going to allow it to depreciate. So we took up the peg and we allowed the currency to quote unquote float. When it's a managed float, it's floating, it's no longer pegged to the dollar. The problem is this. When we floated, we still kept the 44 or so banned items. We still kept that list active. So when you have the CBN, this new NAFEX rate, that's supposed to be the market or managed float, it's still, you cannot go to a bank and buy or import those items that are still banned in Nigeria from the CBN in that market. So that market is not a free market anymore. So you only then have the parallel, what they call the black market, as a real free market where you can go in, willing buyer, willing seller. The CBN market, the floated market, is still not a willing buyer, willing seller, because if I want to import certain items, I'm still banned. And that's why you see the arbitrage, a difference between that unpegged CBN value and the black or parallel market. The real value is the black market, not the CBN value, because the black market is the real willing buyer, willing seller market. So when I just saying the Naira is falling, no, the Naira is actually going to its true value. If it's going to be 1,000, if it's going to be 1,005, it's going to be 500, that's the true value, because the willing buyer and the willing seller have agreed as a value. It's not the 700, it's not the 800, it's whatever the market says it is. So right now, Nigeria still can afford imports. When we get to the point where we can no longer pay DSTV, we can no longer pay foreign subscriptions, then the local market will then say, we can't afford foreign imports, we have to do local substitution. The problem is that local manufacturing is very expensive. It's still cheaper to import rice to Nigeria, pay duty to Nigeria. It's still cheaper than making rice in Nigeria. Why? Power, insecurity. So that's what's going on. You have two markets. We sort of have removed the peg, but because we retain the government capital control still in that old market, then of course it's still the same old system. It's just a managed peg. What needs to be done? Free up the market, allow the CBN rate to compete with the black market rate. So that folks can then say, okay, if I want to send money, I can send money to my bank, and importers can get money from the banks and import whatever they like. Let the market price the import. If you want to import water from France, go ahead. If you bring it to Nigeria, if I can afford it, I'll buy it. If I can't afford it, no one will buy it. Then you stop the import. So the market itself will kill imports. The local substitution can then have a way to get into the market. So it's all tied in: local inflation, local cost of production, imports. As long as imports are cheaper than local production, the Naira will never ever gain value. That's really what we're talking about here.
Kalu Aja, thank you so much. There's just never enough time. It's just never enough time. We have to jump now to the next session, which is on cost of living. So I'm going to start with Chika Mbonu and, of course, Nabila Mohammed. Chika, you talk about inflation a lot. What is it now? 28 points, or is it 25.8? Yeah, that's headline year on year. Food inflation is 29%. So, Chika, the administration, what is it, 500 billion in palliatives? Is it 55 billion to the states and so on? Rice, you just heard Kalu Aja talking about, how importing rice is cheaper than producing it here. What do you make of the cost of living challenges in Nigeria, and how the administration over the last 100 days, Chika, has tried to address those cost of living challenges for the average Nigerian?
I always told you that it's very easy to analyze Nigerian economy. You just look at the price of oil and the volume of production, and then you have an idea of where the Nigerian economy is headed. I'm sorry to say this. I've said this several times, but I keep saying it, that one of the weakest points in our democracy, indeed, public finance management, are the subnational government. The subnational government. The 36 states of the federation, I don't know whether it's 37 now, based on the judgment that was given. Apart from one or two states, substantially, almost other ones are consumption centers, what I call consumption centers, because you don't see, when we talk about employment, creation, inflation management, and so on and so forth, we focus on the federal government. You don't see the contribution of most of these states to any of the issues. Yes, most of them go to collect the FAC allocation from Abuja, and we know what happens immediately to the foreign exchange market. Once FAC allocation comes, the FX market prices all move up, because we know a lot of the money immediately seeps into that market, and it tells you immediately what some of the states are doing. You need to go to some of these states to know the level of infant mortality, out of school children, the poor roads that we have. Literally in some states nothing is happening, but if they tell you the quantum of money that have passed through this state governor's hands, you will shudder. You will shudder. Whether it's Abia or whether it's Zamfara, whether it's, I can just count 1 or 2 or 3 states that are, you see some semblance of things happening. Okay, 5 billion naira has been given to the states. What have you heard that has happened to the states? Go and buy some bags of rice, and then some of them who are going for re-election have tagged their party symbols on those rice to be using to go and do campaign, and then distribute to the favored people. When the states, federal government are going to use the states as the channel for giving this money, I shuddered. I just knew something was going to go wrong. But you see, so you asked me about cost of living, so I say this. What are the 3-4 things, most important things that people spend money in Nigeria, even as we move towards the bottom of the pyramid? More. 1 is what? Transportation. 2 is feeding, maybe housing. I'm not even adding medical. So transportation. How wouldn't it have been a better way of passing that money down, so that people are going to have people are going to have cheaper transportation in their day-to-day movement from place to place, since most states cannot do what Lagos State government has done by doing a rail system. And indeed, a lot of states in Nigeria, if they were serious, could have done something like that. But as I told you, most state governors or state governments are just consumption centers. The local governments are non-existent. If the allocation comes from Abuja, between the state governor and before it gets to the local government, everything is gone. You just need to go to some of these states to go and see what is happening. So I'm not elected. I'm not. I don't know what to use. That 5 billion was given to the states, and that it will trickle down to the masses. Brother, sister, I don't see that happening. I would have thought that 1, companies that have staff buses would have been assisted to get more staff buses so employees who are using public transport can start using staff buses. I would have thought the same thing for state governments also, to buy buses for their civil servants, so that cost will go, will go. On the same thing, if you move that also, the transport unions, a lot of them are very unionized. Is there any way of doing that so that they can also have a way of passing that on to the Nigerian citizens? So you can deal with the issue of transportation, which will add to the cost of food on items moving from one section of the country to another section of the country. So that is that. So yeah, they have done done that. I commend them. But after that, now the issue some states you hear, no, we didn't get 5 billion, we got only 2 billion. No, we didn't do this. So I'm not elated. I'm not optimistic about what will happen, because the money has not been channeled properly. There are better ways of channeling that money and making it impactful to the lives of the Nigerian citizens, so that you can reduce their cost of living, whether it's via food, whether it's via transportation, or whether it's via housing, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chika. Nabila Mohammed, let me bring you in here. I shouldn't be going to Q&A already, but since we're talking about cost of living, right? I just have to pick out this comment here from Igoni Pedro, and he or she says, no discussion on population policy in Nigeria. So we've got, I think Niger has the highest per capita birth rate, and Sub-Saharan Africa has the largest per capita births in the world, and then we're also the poorest. And then Niger leads. I think Angola and Nigeria. Niger is like 6, I think, per woman. Nigeria is at 5.1, 5.3. But I was going to ask you about jobs, so maybe we can throw this in, because if you have a job, depending on how much you are paid, you are able to absorb these spikes in cost of living. So, Nabila, you know, what can we do here? Jobs and population, that's what I want you to address. And plus any other comments you have on this cost of living crisis. What jobs and Nigeria's population? Because I think the last time, wasn't it the Good Luck administration that tried to do a 1 or 2 child policy and he quickly ran away from it? But please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ratu. So for me, my take on this question that you asked me is the fact that we need to identify where the strength of our population is. We need to identify where the bulk of our population lies. On average, our population age is around 19 to 20 years. Now, that tells you something. If on average we are having that age range, it means most of our population falls within the young bracket. And these people are brilliant, they are intelligent, they have the right business ideas, they just need the right environment to build on their ideas, and they need an enabling environment. And to have that enabling environment, what are the key things, what are the condiments to that enabling environment? Power is very important. We do not have stable power supply for now. And if we're looking at, how this will impact the economy going forward, the number of people that are in jobs or have jobs or under the labor force that are employed or not self-employed now, just the ones that are employed are few compared to the ones that are running businesses on their own, and these businesses need to be powered by electricity. So all these issues with regards to cost of living comes from really the environment. We have the right population, we have the right skill set, the human capital that is required, but we do not have the enabling environment to build on these ideas that the large chunk of the population has. And this is one thing that needs to be addressed. So fundamentally speaking, we need to look at challenges that affect the cost of living and not necessarily, having the employers of labor increase salaries. As the previous speaker mentioned, you need to know the areas where these people spend money on, the average Nigerian spends money on. So if we have all these fundamental issues clearly taken care of course, we would not be having the discussion around the increasing population. The increasing population is not necessarily a bad thing if we have the right enabling environment to support that increasing population. We have the skill set. As I earlier mentioned, our average age is around 20, meaning most of them we have the human capital to do all this. And this is what we are talking about, leveraging on what we have to achieve what we want. And we have the resources, both raw, both natural and human. So I'll just leave it there.
Great, which gives us about 3 minutes to round up this particular segment before we go to trade. Zeal, let me bring you in. Zeal is, it looks like Nabila is talking about data and tracking. I don't know, Zeal, do you think our inflation figures are accurately tracking cost of living? I mean, I don't know if that's too controversial. I don't know if I should be there. But anyway, on that front, is it being accurately tracked? I also want to get your take on get your take on where we are with how cost of living is being managed.
Well, cost of living is horrible in Nigeria. And I tell all my friends, those of us who live or work around the Lekki, Ikoyi, VI areas, we are so disconnected from the realities of Lagos. And those of us in Lagos are really disconnected from the realities of Nigeria. The cost of living is terrible in Nigeria. And there are two things that I want to address very quickly regarding cost of living. One is the fact that we do not have a social safety net. And that is what Chika was speaking about. We do not have adequate, whether it is government provided, whether it is free, whatever it is, we do not have adequate mass transportation in Nigeria. Lagos State has just started with the Blue Line, a project that ex-President Buhari had cancelled in 1985, but that's besides the point. The other issue is regarding population. We make a very common error of looking at the population and saying we can transform this population into a workforce. We cannot. What you need is a population that is educated or skilled, whatever you want to use. If you have a population without a social safety net, that's living in poverty, that does not have access to minimum standard of schools or education or skill training, then you are going to have a bloated population that is dependent on God knows what for survival. If you pick a lot of these people off the streets and you want to give them jobs, you actually cannot. As a matter of fact, we've had this conversation in various WhatsApp groups that a lot of people here are on. Even if you went to universities to pick people to give them jobs, you're going to be shocked at the quality we have. So with our growing population, the reason our population is a risk and not an asset is not because of the size. It's because we have not been able to empower that population with a minimum standard of education that allows them to be productive to the economy. Yeah, so that's it, Rotus. You said 3 minutes. I think I did it.
You nailed it. It's 11:20 on the dots, and so we go into trade now. So we're doing well on time. So this session, foreign trade and international diplomatic relations. So let's now bring in I think Kalu Aja here on the matters of, we've seen the president you saw Godre and his presentation, very in-depth, crisscrossing the world. G20 in India, he went to the UAE, signed the deal there. He's been, up and down. And then the notes here, I'm glad Nairametrics pointed it out. He's also the head of ECOWAS now, the chair, and saddled with additional responsibilities there. You saw what happened with the military coup and so on. But as far as trade, Kalu, I want to get your thoughts on what we've seen so far. The announcements, Indorama has already mentioned here and so on and so forth. I think Nabila mentioned them. On international trade and international relations, what you've seen so far, if you want to bring up UAE, G20, Niger, I want to get your take, Kalu.
I mean, the big story was all that G20 and BRICS. We had a chance to be in BRICS. I'm not sure why we didn't push hard to join. Why BRICS? Because our biggest trade partners are India and China. So this whole dollar pressure, right? Imagine if we had gotten into BRICS, perhaps we would have then gotten a better line from China. China has stopped lending to Nigeria in the last year of Buhari's regime. India is one of our largest trade partners. If we had BRICS, perhaps we are going to do a larger swap with India and sort of reduce the pressure on the dollar. We really didn't push that. I'm not sure why we didn't do it. I think the UAE trip was very, very good that he went there. Just going there alone was a win. The controversy about visas and all that was unfortunate, but going there showed that he understood that we need to be out there, right, and to go into that capital. If you look around the world, where are the centers of capital right now, apart from, say, the West, the US and Europe? It's the Middle East, it's Asia. So we have to sort of tilt what we do to focus on the Middle East and Asia to get capital into Nigeria. Nigeria needs FDI. Egypt is not doing as well as Nigeria in terms of macroeconomics, but they have this steady flow of FDI as they've tapped into from the Middle East. We seem not to have a place we can go to and just get a 10 billion line to come to Nigeria and just support our balance sheet, the way Turkey can go to Saudi Arabia, or even the way other countries can go to Middle East and get funds. So we need a big daddy in Nigeria. Someone can go to and say, listen, we need 5 or 10 billion now. We'll give you back in 2-3 years. Because where else are we going to fund this 10 billion we're talking about to clear the FX? There is nowhere I know where they want to go to, but there's nowhere I see where I can get 10 billion in a month to clear FX. The only place apart from where they want to go to is to go to the Nigerians that live abroad, the diaspora, and say, we want to do a bond on because you love Nigeria, invest in the bond. It can work because people can be persuaded to invest in Nigeria if they believe that the government is genuine. This is now where it comes back to the optics of the presidency and his team. When you have the Senate saying they cannot cut their expenses, buying imported cars, and just being generally optics dead, then it makes the president's job harder. So back to international trade, I would say go look for where you can get capital, bring in the private sector, go out, sell Nigeria. It's a big market. We're educated, English speaking, good time zone, lots of opportunities here. Go out and get the funds in. Target the Nigerians first. When Nigerian money comes in, it's easy to then do FDIs for the foreigners. But the short term, target Nigerian diaspora to bring in remittances into the country. Pay their fees, let them come in. That can be a good start to raise about 5-10 billion immediately. Otherwise, man, where it's shaking out right now and getting scary.
Kalu Aja, thank you so much for that. And you actually raised a very interesting point, which I think I want the rest of the panelists to weigh in on here, time willing. Chika Mbonu, let me bring you in. Kalu just said we should lean more on Asia with respect to India. So basically, excuse me, your China and your India. So lean more on them. But we've got the African continental free trade area. And I think if I'm understanding Kalu well, Kalu is saying that, well, perhaps if you want to get money in as quickly as possible, maybe Africa is not where to look. You have to prioritize and get that FX, and so you should tilt to Asia. And Chika, we talk about trade numbers all the time. So what about ECOWAS? What about the AFCFTA? Chika, should we, you know, how do we manage that relationship in terms of trade?
Rotis, when you're broke and you have a lot of broke friends around you, I'm not sure you can get money from your broke friends. Starting from our neighbor, if you want to focus on ECOWAS, starting from your neighbor, Ghana, you know, what will Ghana give to you? Do you understand? You go to Nigerian Republic, what will they give to you? And so on and so forth. So you find that a lot of the African countries are challenged. Apart from maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 African countries that have a net, you know, solid reserve position, a lot of other African countries are also struggling. I think what Kalu is looking at the major giants in Asia. You can talk about China, talk about India. You know, I'm not sure of any other one around that side. You know, and China happens to be on the import side to be our near largest trading partner. And India also on the export side happens to be one of our largest export customers. And so in that respect, there's a foundation for us to be able to be able to relate to them and let things happen between us and them. But you know, it is dog eat dog out there. I never believe that anything comes from China like the free meal. China will always want the pound of your flesh. And India is gotten smarter about certain things also. You know, even oil, India is abandoning our oil and going to Russia to get cheaper oil. Now, see, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, you know, posits, look at how they work. You know, look at African massive market, and we'll say that if Nigeria is a manufacturing country, we don't need to go far to look for where to sell our products. And Africa is it for us. What you know, and one of the speakers before has analyzed the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. You know, and I thought about it several times. Look at the difficulties in I think it's Kalu. I think it's Kalu that also talked about that. I believe the fact that the things produced in Nigeria are more expensive than the things you even bring import from China and India and so on and so forth. So until you remove the impediments that limit the production capacity in Nigeria, and number one being power. In the last how many years, 30 years, 40 years, we have been battling this power. And we're not even able to move it up by 1,000 megawatts. It's a shame for our country that we are not gotten that right. You know, so all you hear is scams and fraud and everything, you know, which is just the backbone of everything I see in Nigeria, you know, fraud and scams and misuse of public funds and so on and so forth. You know, so power, you know, is a problem. You saw the report that said that to move products from Apapa Port to the manufacturing base in Ikeja, industrial estate in Ikeja, is more expensive than to bring the raw materials from China. So you look at the impediments to Nigerian manufacturing sector. So what do we really need to export to Africa? But the market is there for us. So those are the problems we have. Yeah, so Asia, yeah, China, our biggest trading partner, in India, the same thing. But this is don't come, you know, but will require, you know, high level of negotiation. You know, listen, guys, I would never allow the last government of Nigeria, led by President Buhari, to get away easily, because everything was dumped on the Central Bank of Nigeria, and everything that went wrong for those 8 years seems to be Central Bank of Nigeria. But see, guys, that government messed up the whole economy of Nigeria. You know, even from the first day they started, the first thing they did was to ban you cannot pay cash into DOM account, and that caused so much panic in the system. And you can list this, so many things they did. At the time, Central Bank of Nigeria became the Minister for Trade, Minister for Agriculture, Minister for because there was the lacuna, you know, all these things. You know, so the Minister for Trade was dead. Minister for Agriculture was dead. So you look at all those things, and we want to make sure that this new government that's coming to now will lead from the front. They have done some good things. The president has traveled around, but the next thing is the follow-up actions by the ministers to make sure things happen. That's the point. And then come back home to do the dirty work required to make sure that our power system works. Now, somewhere is written that any country that doesn't have security and has corruption, the level Nigeria has, and wants foreign investment, this is just fooling themselves. So what of security? This is within our control. You know, there's some elementary things that we need to raise to the higher level for you to get better. You need to be better in your home before you can be better outside. You know, my mother used to say, you want to shine outside. Meanwhile, your home is in a mess. Our home in Nigeria is in a mess. There's no power. Security is very bad. You know, cost of production is very, very high. You cannot move products from north to south. Logistics value chain is horrible. The roads are bad. The multiplicity of taxes. There's so many things, and all this is under our control. Any government that is serious can solve all these problems, you know, with conscientious ministers. So, yes, go to China. Yes, go to India. But let's get our home right. You know, let's get our home right. Even with our 200 million people, if the per capita income increases even by $10 or $20, the market internally here is enough to capture all the things that we do. And those are the issues. And I'm hoping that the government will look into this and make sure that even as we're going outside and doing all this gallivanting and all these trade things, let us look inside and prepare our country to do the simple things that are required to make our country competitive. Let me just stop there.
Well said, Chika. Thank you so much for that. Nabila Mohammed, Nabila Mohammed, let me come to you here. Still on this matter of trade, and maybe this comes back to power, but what we export as far as our raw materials versus finished goods, value-added goods. You take cocoa, for example, right? Your Ivory Coast, your Ghana, Nigeria, all exporters of cocoa, but we're not part of that multi-billion-dollar chocolate market. So in terms of improving trade for Nigeria, that transition to value-added good, is it just about power, or is it also about skills? And then what about the attitude of Nigerians ourselves towards locally made goods versus goods that are made in other countries? Our love for foreign goods, or maybe it's just that Nigerians love quality, and does that mean that what we make here is not? So those three there, the value-added goods, what we need to get there, and then the attitude of Nigerians towards, you know, items made here versus foreign items.
I think it's all three combined: the skills, the attitude of Nigerians, and of course improving our products and making sure that they are up to standard. Because aside the fundamental problems that we have in the country that has to be addressed, you've mentioned power, you've mentioned, you know, the infrastructure and other infrastructural things that needs to be in place. We need the right skill set to get these products to the level, to the standard that they would be, you know, accepted and both locally and internationally. So it's like everything combined. And I would say this with regards to trade, for Nigeria to be the Germany of Europe, we need to fix our fundamental problems and get them right. So that, because having the president as even the ECOWAS president gives like an extra attention to the country and should put them on their toes to fix the internal problems, so that when we are speaking to other, nations outside, they know that we are coming from a place where things are set right, things are in the right order, and we are not just coming to tell you, just like Mr. Chika said, you have to fix your problems at home before you think of the outside. And all these things are interwoven. If we can do that, of course, we would see that exporting our finished products will not be an issue. We will not be known to be exporting the raw materials and now importing what we can actually do on our own. So there are certain things that needs to be in place internally for that to happen. If I'm just speaking to we exporting crude oil and not now importing the refined one, it's a problem that needs to be fixed internally. So all these things have to do with how we manage our issues internally and, push them out there for acceptance, and would change our attitude and start to patronize ourselves. But then it's one key thing that was mentioned earlier is the fact that importing some of these things happen to be less expensive compared to when we are patronizing our locally made products. And what is the reason behind that? The fundamental issues that we have continued to sing and rhyme about, that we do not have the power, we do not have the road network, we do not have a lot of things, and all these things contribute to increasing prices of goods and services that are made locally. So you will see people's attitudes lean towards going to get importing these particular products. So generally speaking, it's everything combined. It is our attitude, it is our skill, it is our issues regarding infrastructure, and resolving it the right way. Of course, when we do all these things combined, as I mentioned earlier, when we go and speak to nations, they will know we are not just coming from a place of we are coming from a place that we have done something, and that thing is working for us.
Thank you so much, Nabila. All right, Zeal, Akara, let me bring you in here. Zeal, there's something Ugodre has talked a lot about. I think even you, in our, various chats on services, and how services should be what Nigeria should lean on. Perhaps our competitive advantage is there. I remember talking to Dr. Andrew Nevin, formerly of PwC. He was saying that they wrote a report where Nigeria should just focus on exporting, skills, getting a number of youth working for companies overseas and bringing in extra FX. What's your take on that regard? Should we be so focused on value-added goods and exporting that, or should we, transition to services? And then two, Nabila did make a point that appointing President Tinubu as the chair of ECOWAS is good because it puts the focus on Nigeria and puts them on their toes. But others would argue that it's a distraction. So Zeal, those two, should we be focusing on services? Also get your thoughts on trade, and then Tinubu's appointment, is it a distraction for a chair of ECOWAS, or is it a good thing that should put the administration on its toes?
I'll start from the second question because it's a lot easier. I don't think it's a distraction, unless he wants to be distracted. But no, I don't think it's a distraction. I do think there are issues around it because we as Nigerians have our own domestic issues, and we would rather a president that we feel has 100% attention to our domestic issues. But honestly, it's a lot of work to be a Nigerian president. If the distraction could have been avoided better, but I don't think it's going to change significantly the amount of effort and efficiency that the president is going to put into Nigeria. If he does not put in as much effort into Nigeria, it's not because he was head of ECOWAS. That was the easier one. The first question regarding exporting services and focusing on that. You know what they say about focus? When you focus on one thing, it kind of blurs your vision on everything else around it. I'm not one of those that believes that there's any one thing that we should focus on. There are so many things we can do at the same time. We have focused on oil for the past 3 generations, and yet if we do not have foreigners invest in our oil sector, we still cannot do this thing ourselves. We have not developed our refinery capacity. We have 4 refineries. We produce our own oil. We export the oil and import the refined products. And yet, since 1950 or so, we have focused on oil. So that focus has not yielded us the results we expect. So I'm not one of those who says, let's leave everything else and do any one thing. What I would say is that there's a lot of room for a lot of improvement in a lot of sectors in Nigeria. A lot of those things, some of those things need a little less effort than others. So for example, we've seen what's going on with the entertainment and the entertainment industry and the music industry as a whole, largely because there's no government involvement. You know, in some areas, the government should just close their eyes to everything, strengthen the tax law so that you get your tax income and you move on, leave it to do what it does. To a large extent, there are very many areas in our productivity cycles that this will work. What I think we need to focus on, and I've said focus is a thing, but what I need to focus on is not any one thing, but it's productivity as a whole. Our economy is structured on what I call an inverted pyramid, where we export raw materials which have very, very low value, and then import finished goods that have very high value. Now, there's nothing wrong with importing finished goods that you don't produce, but the issue is in a situation where what we have is a lack of productivity. We are not producing enough. We are importing. I have a client, and I remember I was doing some risk management for them, and they had over $400 million worth of wheat imports to make, right? There's no reason why we cannot produce our own wheat. We also import our own maize, yet we are producing cocoa and exporting it and importing chocolates. So we have this thing where we do not know how to add value to anything that we produce. And for me, that's a much bigger issue. Whether it be crude oil or tomatoes, West Africa or Africa's largest producers of cassava, and yet we import ethanol. And we do the same thing with the human resource. Look at, starting from our doctors that have all jackpot, to our IT staff, to our sports people. We have raw resource in talent. We have no capacity to process that talent to become productive. So what do? We ship out, whether deliberately or inadvertently, ship out our raw talent. Somebody else adds value to them, and then they become productive and earn, but they don't earn for us. So that, for me, is significantly more important. And what you said about exporting people to do services, the service industry is a highly skilled industry that's based on very qualified educational capacity. If we do not strengthen our educational sector, then where are we going to get the people to be trained to even do what we want in terms of exporting services? So we have to look at the whole thing holistically. We have to deal with the root issue, our inability to think as processors. And what I told somebody in summary was that if I were the president of Nigeria, just on this one thing, not on anything else, I would not double as the Minister of Petroleum, because that gives you an idea what the entire government is intending to focus on. I will double as the Minister for Power, because if the whole world sees that these guys are taking power seriously, then maybe they will take productivity seriously. And that is what we really need, the ability to produce and process, because that's where the real value addition is. So that's it, Rotus. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Zeal Akari. That was excellent. Thank you, all the panelists. That brings us to Q&A, and we never ever have enough time for Q&A. We've got about 2 minutes to go in this session, so I think I'll just add these 2 minutes to the Q&A. So for all our participants, hit that Q&A box. I'm already seeing lots of questions already, and we historically on this webinar we never ever finish the questions. So let me take this extra 2 minutes and let's start with Kalu Aja. There's a question here from James. What is Kalu's view? Actually, this is in the chat box. It's not in the Q&A, but I'll just put it in there. But please put your questions in the Q&A. What is Kalu's view on tourism? He talks about it a lot. How can that improve our situation? I think that's from James. Kalu, what's your take on tourism? You might mention, I'm sure you mentioned insecurity, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a quick win, low-hanging fruit that we can easily package and get funds in here. I mean, tourism is a lot. Tourism is having Burna Boy sing in a concert in Calabar and doing a package deal with the airlines to fly you from anywhere to Calabar just for that concert package deal. It's also all this New Yam Festival, Ogun River Festival. We can package all that stuff, right? People can come in and they can watch it and they can pay in dollars. The point is, tourism creates a lot of jobs, a lot of jobs. Most of the guys think they're going to come and harm the tourists. Give them jobs as security guys, and you have the whole place peaceful. I remember when a church used to do an event in Tafa Square, and that area was notorious for, like, for muggings and all that. They basically got the area boys and they put the area boys in charge of security, t-shirts, big flyers, and the area boys, apart from the money they made, just the pride that they could actually work and people were like encouraging them. That whole place was calm. So do the same thing. If you're earning dollars, you tell those guys you can bring in a New Yam Festival in some part of the world, right? You can bring people in and we're going to pay you in dollars for 2 weeks. That place will be calm and you earn the dollars. So it creates jobs, it brings in remittances, it brings in dollars. There is a you don't have to build infrastructure per se. So packages, we go abroad and watch Harry Potter, bring people in here to come and watch Amadioha, all that stuff that we frown at. People want organic food, even jollof rice. We haven't even benchmarked jollof rice, Get organic rice grown in Africa, blah, 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 free range chickens, all that kind of stuff. Package it properly and export it. That's a value add. It's a quick win, it's a low hanging fruit. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Kalu Aja. I appreciate your thoughts there on tourism. Chika Mbonu, let me come to you with this next question. This question is from Wheezy. I like that. So I thought it was Wizkid for a second. But Wheezy is asking about the amount of money in circulation in the informal sector. And well, he's asking whether, or she is asking whether it can be tracked. We know it can be tracked. But Chika, are we missing out on the money circulating in the informal sector? Can we formalize? How do we get them formalized, Chika?
It's always a problem. How you get to know is for real. The money in the informal sector is a lot. The way you get to know is that each time that you have one of these major markets on fire, you will hear tales of woes of millions of dollars a lot of times that people have lost, got burnt in their shops, and millions of naira, and also that have happened for several reasons. A lot of people, even as a lender, a lot of times when you go and analyze the financial statement of a lot of SMEs or even the mid-level enterprises, they will tell you that what you see in the bank statement is not all, because there's something else, that is not there. So I always believe that the banking system, which I can call the formal sector for the financial system, is Nigeria, for example, is barely controlling about 50% of the money out there. A lot of other money. That's why the country was hit very hard when the cash was withdrawn from circulation. That's why the country was hit very hard, because of the fact amount of quantum of money, business still being done out there informally. And even though CBN was trying to move the people to the formal system, which was like the online system. Yes. Why would somebody in Onitsha market, in Alaba market, in Kanu market, keep their money in cash, whether it's dollars or naira, when they know the money should be in the bank? Have you asked yourself that question? A lot of it has to do with one. Sometimes people say, oh, if you show so much money in your bank account, it means the tax authorities will come for you. And then, your tax will be increased. So a lot of people try to hold a lot of money informally, which is one element. So the Presidential Committee on the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform has been done in some other countries. Have tried to tax the informal sector or bring the informal sector into the formal business environment. And there must be incentives to make sure that people do this, not threats and so on and so forth. People must understand why the advantage of bringing their businesses to the formal sector, not just the fear of taxation. And I have said it, I've spoken about taxation several times, and I say taxation, for example, somebody defined it as the government share in your profits for enabling your business to make more profits. So if the container that you used to bring from the port and carry it to Alaba market, as it's going there, it collapses each time. The trailer falls and you lose your goods because of bad roads. And the fact that you go to Alaba market, almost every shop has their own generator and it's costing them money. And somehow government is able to get power right, which means you not spend money on generator and petrol again. Government is able to do the roads again, which means you won't lose money again by moving your containers from the ports to the market when you are moving them, because you're seeing your cost of operation reducing. That incremental profit that comes from it, you're glad enough to pass on some to government as tax. That's the moral situation of tax. So as I said, one of the reasons a lot of people are still in the informal sector is to hide their wealth in quotes from the government. And hiding away from government means that they don't want to be taxed on some other levies and fines and fees. But you need to encourage people by getting things right, for that to happen. Look at Lagos State government now. If the blue line is extended to Alaba International Market or even to the border with the Benin Republic, you can imagine the time. I've gone to the border before, Benin Republic, Cotonou border, and it took me almost 7 hours from there to main Lagos. Can you imagine if I use train now that's done by Lagos State government and it reduces, and the traders also do that? People will be willing, when you speak to them and talk to the union, they'll be willing to contribute something to the government towards that, and they're encouraged to bring their businesses from informal to formal. Let me just drop it there.
Thank you so much, Chika. There are so many questions. Gosh, I wanted to give one to Nabila, then another one came in. Okay, Nabila, what? Oh, my word. Okay. Nabila, how can, this is coming from, page Oladipo. No, not Oladipo, hold on. There are a lot of questions in here. Let me see. Hold on. I just lost it because a few more came in and threw me off. But anyway, I can't remember who sent this question, but the question was on the states. How can the states attract investments into each of the states? What can the states do now? And here's an example. I'm just off the top of my head. The governor of Enugu State, Mr. Umba, he was just affirmed, the tribunal just upheld his election victory, right? He has, he's advertising, he's had forums, he's just been going everywhere telling people to come to Enugu State and invest. Is that the model to follow, Nabila? How do the states bring investments into their regions?
So for Enugu, yes, they have held a conference with, potential investors. They invited, individuals within the state, outside the state that they believe can support development within their region. It is a welcome development. It is something positive that I think all states can adopt. It's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is to have these conferences, let these potential investors know that their funds will be well utilized, and whenever they want to, investment is practically safe across board. So it's one thing to let these people know, get a gathering together in terms of establishing a conference and inviting them and assuring them that this is what they are going to benefit from the investments in the long term, in the short term, just practically breaking it down for these investors to have peace of mind and be rest assured that they are making the right choice with their state. So I think states can actually adopt this particular model the way Enugu has done, and if they decide to, if other states decide to adopt it, it will be a welcome idea. If we even look at public-private partnerships, it's also another way that states can improve investments within their own jurisdiction. So these are like two key things that they can do. First is to have a conference call. The next thing is to encourage them with certain incentives and try as much as possible to promote public-private partnerships across within their jurisdiction. They have private businesses that they can partner with as a state government to boost the productivity of their region or of their jurisdiction. So incentives, yes. Conferences with potential investors, yes. Encouraging public-private partnerships, yes, are all things that states can do to improve the investments within their space.
Thank you for that, Nabila. Zeal, let me come to you with this next question from Sarah Ogwama. Sarah says, I believe Nigerians don't believe in taxation because they cannot see or feel the impact of the taxes already paid. How can the Nigerian government deal with the issue of tax evasion in Nigeria? Secondly, there are a lot of leakages in the taxes collected by the informal tax collectors, again, the Agberos, area boys, and so on. How can we refine the informal tax collection process to block all existing loopholes? Chika kind of touched on that, but Zeal, let me throw those two to you from Sarah.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Mr. Mbonu not just touched on it, he addressed it adequately. Tax is a relationship. There's a responsibility on the citizens to pay, and the government has a fiduciary responsibility to use that payment for the betterment of the society. When that trust is broken, the onus is on government to demonstrate that it can be trusted. In our case, and I mean, we know what's going on with the tax reforms, and someone asked me to critique the tax reforms, and I said, I'm not critiquing the tax reform, because when it comes to extracting taxes or revenue or resources from the citizens, the government will put the best brains there, the best policies, and apply the best technology. When it comes to giving service to the people, the government will then start looking for quota and catchment areas and all sorts of things and excuses. That's where it breaks down. Pay your taxes. I should see the result of the taxes. The government should be transparent and accountable. You cannot, if you don't do that, then more and more people are going to avoid and evade paying any tax whatsoever. And Mr. Mbonu touched on it excellently well. If I don't see the impact of the tax I'm paying, because as a company, for example, 32% of my profit goes to the government. So you're a 32% shareholder. What are you bringing to the table other than extracting value from me? Until the government itself can demonstrate what it's bringing, and that is done, in my opinion, through accountability. And we know that our tax resources are revenue as a country. There's little or no accountability from local government to state. It's only recently that some state governments even started releasing audited financials. But even at that, the Freedom of Information Act that we passed is not adhered to. The Public Procurement Act is not adhered to. So in the absence of the government being transparent on revenue, you cannot be surprised that citizens will avoid losing their value to what they think is a black hole. That's it, Rotus.
Thank you, Zeal. Few more minutes to go. Okay, actually, folks, I see that some of our panelists are actually answering the questions in fact, that was what threw me off. I saw a question and it disappeared because it was answered, so it was moved. But let me throw this in. Kalu Aja, let me bring you back in here. Daniel Nwabuko is asking this question. Daniel says, or asks, how worried should Nigeria be regarding the ongoing electric vehicle transition in developed countries and its potential to disrupt our future crude oil export earnings, bearing in mind that crude oil exports account for about 79% of Nigeria's export revenue? So should we be worried about the electric vehicle transition, Kalu Aja?
Yeah, we should be. It should be a big worry. I always say the biggest sovereign risk to Nigeria is that one guy in New York is going to take NNPC to court and accuse NNPC of exporting poison to Americans and sue us for 100 billion. You know, it's not conjecture. They've already sued the big 5 oil companies in America and the same New York. So they're going to come for us. They are making EVs very cheap through subsidies, and they're going to make crude oil very expensive through regulation. So long term, the market will squeeze. Oil will be there, but it'll be very expensive to sell your oil. So countries like Nigeria, without all these floating tankers that we can take our oil to the markets, like how Saudi and Iran do, that they have tankers parked right there in Asia, it's going to cost us more to sell oil. So even though oil prices go up, our margins will shrink because we don't have that infrastructure. Saudi is now investing in the US, in the retail in the US. So they have an avenue to pump their oil from Saudi Arabia and sell in the US. Nigeria doesn't have that capacity as it stands. So to broaden the question, this green revolution is a big threat to Nigeria. It's going to restrict our ability to sell. It's not just oil, even gas. They call gas, quote unquote, dirty. So once they're done with all this Russia-Ukraine thing, they're going to come back and they're going to start to ban. Remember, they had banned oil and gas, new funding from the banks for oil and gas globally, or just Ukraine and Russia that basically put the funding back on plate. So we have to be very careful that 10, 20 years down the line, this might not be a revenue source. Oil isn't going to go anywhere, but if you don't have the capacity to sell to the markets directly, like all Saudis investing in South Korean markets, in India, in the US, they're going to be priced out of that market. That's my take.
We are bang on time. Kalu Aja, thank you so much. I don't remember the last time we were able to do this. We always went over time. So, Ugo, there was a question on stock markets and the health of the NGX. I don't know if you should want to close with that, but there you have it. Another excellent webinar. So many other questions. I've seen our panelists answer them live. Look, nairametrics.com to the world. I'm sure that everything's going to be shared with our participants later. Ugo, I don't know if you have any comments, or Joanna can come in and take us through with some closing remarks. You panelists have been awesome. This has been incredibly informative. Still so many questions, but thanks Nairametrics for putting this together. Joanna or Ugo?
Before Joanna closes, I just want to use the opportunity to thank the panelists. I mean, it was such an engaging session, and also to the participants as well. Reading the comment section was just so much fun, and a lot of nuggets was also shared in the comment section. So I mean, you guys were also so instructive in your comments and your feedback, and it's just amazing as well. So thank you also, Rotus, and for you too. I love those questions. I had a few as well, but I think I'll tackle Kalu and Zeal on the side later. I'll tackle them later on the side. I had a few questions for them. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. And of course, as Rotus hinted earlier, if you missed anything, this whole webinar will be available in no time on YouTube. So you can always play catch up, take better notes, and refer back to this conversation. A huge thank you to all our panelists for today. As you heard, they nailed it. Nabila Mohammed, thank you. Chika Mbonu, Kalu Aja, Zeal, thank you so much for honoring our invitation and, of course, making this conversation insightful and engaging as possible as we assess the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 100 days in office. It's a milestone he attained, I believe, September 6th. And of course, we're still counting. Evidently, there's so much that can and cannot be achieved in 100 days. In the same vein, something needs to be done soon. I remember one of the panelists mentioning the fact that we don't want to end up in the same WhatsApp group as Ghana, bankrupt. So let's believe that Nigeria will better position and posture itself to receive all the necessary investments, plug the supply gaps, and strengthen infrastructure, right? And we're not just going to be that consumption center. So yes, we do have these conversations every now and then, the webinar. And hopefully by the next time we have the webinar, we'll not be addressing the same issues, something changes. But between now and the next webinar, of course, we have conversations constantly going on X, Twitter. So you want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Nairametrics. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. we have, our spaces where we, follow these conversations, keep up to date and discuss trending stories around, the Naira, the money, something, especially recently, something is happening almost every day as regards the economy. So you want to stay up to date with that as well. On Saturdays, there's the elitist version somewhat on Clubhouse. We follow the money. So make sure you're a part of that as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. And download the app. Yes, there's application, it's back and it's better. You want to be the first to get the latest news, so make sure you get the app. It's available on iOS, it's available on Google Play Store, right? So make sure you get the app. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of today's webinar. Always engaging. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Rotus. And thank you to the founder, Ugo as well. I am Joanna Mustafa. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.